Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thanks for joining us on a Friday. It's Friday morning here in Boulder, Colorado, but I see people from all over the world joining. So welcome from wherever you are in the world. We're going to just jump right in with the presentation soon. I'll just say a few words of introduction. Tsultrim Foundation is collaborating with AI researchers at UC Berkeley to support the development of research and translation tools that leverage the powers of AI technology. So you can check out Sebastian Nerdick and Kurt Koitzer's projects over at Dharmamitra.org. I know there's a lot of different AI projects going on right now and a lot of tools. It's kind of amazing amount of development going on in the world of AI, and it's hard to keep track of. In fact, too much, even for those of us who are interested in it. So today we'll have some time to slow down and take a look at some practical examples of how you can use some of these tools for your research and translation. So Gregory will be sharing his screen and presenting soon, but as we go, please use the Q&A function to ask questions. So he'll pause his presentation at the end of each section to answer questions before moving on. But please do focus your questions on the tools and the presentation being given and not on hyper-specific examples of your own work or unrelated issues of philosophy or philology. Perhaps we can handle those in a separate workshop. Gregory Forgues is our Director of Research here at Tsultrim Foundation. But before joining us, he was at the Open Philology Research Project with Jonathan Silk at Leiden University, and he did his PhD on MIPAM in Vienna. Greg has published a wide variety of topics, including on Mahayana Sutras, some translations, Tibetan Tantric rituals, Dzogchen teachings, and of course, digital humanities methods. But perhaps most importantly for us today, he's been trying to keep up with all of the AI tools relevant for translators of Tibetan texts these days. So without further ado, please welcome Greg, and let's jump right in.
Thank you, Marcus, for the introduction. Thanks everyone for being here today. So we've been looking into AI tools from different angles in the past months. We also have this cooperation with Berkeley University, Sebastian Nerdick, Professor Kurt Koitzer. So that's another interesting development. As Marcus was saying, a lot is happening in that field almost on a daily basis. I'm pretty sure that anyone will listen to this talk in 3 months will be like, wow, wait, it'll be obsolete by then. But yeah, the goal of our little session on AI and LLMs today is just to kind of look at various functionalities of that these tools offer and what we can do with them to preserve and translate Dharma. So that's really the idea here, in a way that is efficient, accurate, and respectful too. So there are, as you know, many issues about AIs too, ethical issues, for example, or technical ones. I won't go into that for these talks, and I think it's a very important topic too. But before talking about this, I think it's important to really understand or to understand as well as possible what these tools are about and what it is they can do. So what I suggest is we will have a look at that, and maybe in a future session, if there is an interest, we can talk about ethical considerations, look at them in detail. But right now, I'd like to just give you guys an overview of what we've been looking at, and give you practical solutions, show as well limitations possibly, and then that these tools have, and see how we can really make sense of what's happening and whether it's useful or not for us translators or researchers in the field of Tibetan Buddhism and Tibetan studies in general. So my own journey, I've been involved with languages of Buddhism, Tibetan, Sanskrit, a little bit of Pali to Chinese over the years, and I've been working on computational methods aside, so to speak, of my main work, but to increase the quality of the research I was doing and the translations I was producing. And so that's something I'd like to share first with you too. We're talking a lot about AI, and it's very interesting that AI and LLMs are making it now, um, making it to a bigger audience, becoming a theme, becoming actually something everyone is talking about, including in our field. This is wonderful, but it's not really something totally new in the sense of, yes, the tools are new, but the computational approach to text analysis is not. And there's been a lot of developments. So I wanted to show you that. And today we'll talk about this. Before that, we will look at the different steps of, what the translation work involves and see how, we will have case studies about these different steps in the workflow of a translator. So I share my screen and start with the maybe first presentation. All right. All right. Can you see my screen? Is it okay? All right, good. Okay, so first, I think the starting point for us to ground, this session or these sessions we'll have about AI is what is we're talking about, right? And what are the areas that we will explore together in relation to what LLMs can do. There is, of course, the translation process itself, which is, the like turning the transformation of the text that comes into a different language into, say, English, French, German, Chinese, whatever other
Greg, do you
language
want to
you're talking
go
about.
full screen so we can see the whole?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
all right, sure. But there are other steps in this workflow. We have, of course, project documentation. So when you start a new translation project, you would have to most probably create your own documentation or use your own documentation to, better understand some complexities involved in the translation itself. So that's an important thing we will talk about. This project documentation actually is a big initial step. We have as well the pre-translation analysis, which focuses on analyzing project corpus and preparing resources. Now we're talking really more maybe about, looking at the text and starting to maybe decide even what text you want to translate. So this is another phase. Translation is an area everyone is talking about in relation to AI right now. And I will not start by showing you how tools, wonderful tools like Mönlam AI, Dharmamitra, or even Cloud, for example, work on translations quite yet, because I want to introduce all the LLMs gradually, before we reach the actual translation work that LMs can perform. That will help us, I think, having better conversations. I will, in the case studies, I will show you, have a few translation points and things like that. But I thought it'd be better to first understand how the LLMs, how the, as well, web interface you will use while using these tools, how they work first, become, familiar with prompting. So prompting is how to ask questions. But we will see in the future too what's happening there. And here we have a nice development. We have the Kensei Vision project as well that has this cat tool that we'll probably integrate, I think, AI, an AI tool to suggest a translation. So there are a lot of developments in this area too. But before we do that, we are going to look at the other steps, project documentation, pre-translation analysis, translation apparatus, which is, for example, how you generate comments, annotations, and publication preparation. So indexing, formatting, issues like this. So in every of these steps, we have a lot of sub-steps, or it's a long journey every time from the moment we have an idea about a project, a translation project, and then the moment we start translating, there are a lot of operations we are going to perform usually. For example, we may want to find, related text, have an idea of, okay, what's the literature on my text? So if I translate it for 84,000 the Sandhya Mochana Sutra, for example, yeah, where I had to have an idea as well of Tanjore text commentaries or related, primary literature on that. So the text will be, my translation will be published by Wisdom soon. And I want to thank the team at Columbia, by the way, for working on that. And yeah, it's the way you start a project, right? You say, okay, I want to translate this sutra, for example, but then you will have to find key literature that can be helpful in the translation itself. You may have to find versions of the original text to make sure you're not going to miss anything. So OCR can be useful in that case. If you need to compare versions, you need to have, e-text, so digital versions of the text, for which OCR, for example, is something that will come handy if you don't want to type up, 30 versions of a sutra, which we have now because of what the Vienna University team has done. So now for sutra, we'll have up to, 30, 35 witnesses. So that's another area for translators of incredible development. So Eric Werner with BDRC has been working on that and has developed a tool here that uses, AI and LM. So this is really something, huge area of development for translators because it allows us to align text and then to produce either a critical edition or to get a sense at least of your textual environment when you start a translation project. And even if you work on just a few text, you have only a few versions, it's still good to see what textual variations you would have among these texts, what kind of later editions or emendations were made, for example. So that's this phase, and we'll look at that. Now I've been working with Sajra as well, with a lot of senior translators working on texts from all time periods and traditions, and everyone faced, of course, this issue. So they're very practical points, bases that we have to cover as translators when we start a new translation project. And of course, we have to ideally identify project scholarship. So everything that's been published on, the text you want to translate, or anything that's been published on areas that may help you to better understand what's going on in your text. For example, Sandhya Mochana Sutra, 10 chapter, a lot of pre-Dignaga pramanas there. And, that's not what the whole text is about, but there's a whole section about this. And you may want to find, resources to better understand what this particular chapter is about. So practical things like this. Then pre-translation analysis is to get a sense of the literature itself, right? You want to know what are the entities, for example, because you need to document that. If you have figures, places, locations, depending on the project, if you're translating on Namtar, and you need to understand a certain time period, if you're translating something, about the life story of a specific figure of Tibetan Buddhism, there may be things here you want to read before you're halfway in the project, for example, a history of the place where things happen. So having a sense of what the main entities are is important. Having a sense of, relationships, hierarchies in the core key terminology in the text, for example, doctrinal text, having a sense of, okay, these are the keywords doctrinally in terms of technical terminology in the project. There are other terms related to that. How do they relate? What kind of a documentation do I need in relation to that? What other primary sources do I want to check? So that's another issue. Corpus analysis, well, sometimes you want to look beyond the single text you're looking at. You want to look at textual patterns, how a discourse about emptiness, Buddha nature unfolds across the collected work of an author or across even collected works like Sungbums and stuff like that. Want to maybe discern if there is any, evolution across time periods, things like this. So there are a lot here of other, things we can do as translators, and ideally, I guess most of us would like to do that because it's really useful and will help you contextualize, the text. It will give like context, right, in a way. And so here we go to translation process itself. I'm not going to go through that too much, But there's a lot of like things there where LLMs can be useful too. Syntactic analysis, for example, in some cases, having a sense, okay, wait, what's going on in this sentence? Is that something that is just isolated, just happening here in my text, or can I find it somewhere else in the corpus of this author? I mean, a lot of issues like this. We'll look at that too. Now, post-translation is another big area of work for us, right? We have to prepare the publication, meaning we need a glossary, we need an index. So definition extractions, for example, from the corpus of the author can be really interesting. For example, how does Longchenpa define Deshenimpo, right? What's a definition that's not my definition that I just like, may project on the author or the text, but how can I extract definitions in a glossary, and not just, or turn the glossary into a mini dictionary on the basis of the text or the textual environment itself. Then we can check translation too, quality control, right? So editing is huge part, and it looks small here, but we all know that working with editors, we have a lot of things to check once the translation has been produced. So we have consistency in terminology, for example, accuracy, style adherence, whether we have logical relationships too when it comes to terminology, particularly philosophical doctrinal terminology. We have to see, is the extension of meaning in the source language the same as in the target language? If I use that term, do I imply things basically that are not included in the word senses of the original term? Can it be, so there are a lot of discussions, and funny enough, here, we usually have a lot of discussions with that, right? I mean, and that's fair enough because it's complicated. It's a tough process. And here we have new LLMs that can kind of reason, so you can enter a kind of dialogue with them to understand whether your terminology makes sense and whether it's overreaching compared to the original language or not, and all this. And if you have as well a network of terms, of technical terms, how they relate together, how you translated one term in relation to another one, does it make sense across languages? I mean, you say it can become really complicated, and LLMs are a really good tool for that. Okay, you can comment as well. I mean, you produce comments and annotations that can be generated, and we'll see that all this work has to be always supervised, but I'll say more in a minute. All right, so that's more or less what I wanted to talk about with the, journey and the main tasks that I will try to document through case studies on the idea of how can we benefit from from these tools, these LLMs and AI tools. But before we go there, I want to show you guys as well that what's been happening with LLMs, now we're like, oh my God, they're AI, they're going to replace humans and everything. But there's been an evolution in terms of computational methods in relation to textual analysis and how you can deal with large collection of text, how you can, improve translations. So it's been quite a journey there too. And, I was thinking it'd be good maybe to give a short overview, but that's going to be very short. And no, there won't be any enlightenments, most probably, at the end of the 10 slides. And by the way, I have more than 10, but just 10, I think. But yeah, let's start and have a look at that, okay, and see what's happened in the field, what other as well areas in the humanities and the translation studies, what has been happening there, in terms of these computational methods and areas from which we can benefit. So corpus linguistics has been around for a while now. Text mining, semantic mapping with word embeddings, and then finally now we have AI and LLMs. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit because, as there are issues as well with LLMs, and it's good for translators, it's good and researchers to have a kind of backup solution to check our results and not to follow blindly whatever the LLM, will help us do or tell us. So these methods are quite good because they're very linear. We know what's happening, and they've been time tested. So very shortly, just to share this vocabulary, because I will show you examples how you can bring together some of these methods and enter into a dialogue with the LLM to, evaluate the results, the output of corpus linguistic methods, very simple one, for example, how you can, you know, um, mine the results produced by these methods to get better, even better results. So it's all about sharing this kind of vocabulary together. And in these sessions, I'll have always a little more abstract, more theoretical presentation before turning to very practical case studies where I show you the tools, the issues, the problems, and at the same time the achievements, the results, and everything we can do. So first, corpus linguistics. In a nutshell, Fox is on analyzing text collections, usually large corpora of text, to better understand language usage and patterns. The idea is really to uncover, relationship with regards, for example, and these are just examples, but terminology, syntax, or or to see what text include the terminology you may be interested in, for example, across the corpus. So I was working on myself on Mipam Rinpoche's, you know, um, vision his ultimate view, and I followed an approach based methodologically based on uh, corpus linguistic and text mining to make sense of his discourse on the topic. So starting very clearly with the discourse on the ultimate, and then isolating terminology, looking at it in context and all this. So these tools are very useful to do that. They've been around for a long time. And if you know in the humanities, they have what they call discourse analysis, usually critical discourse analysis, where they, for example, would analyze, how a discourse um, develops through articles in the press or things like this, and and so these tools have been very, very reliable and used uh, for decades now. Key techniques, collocations. So how word go together, how words, sorry, pair, or how you have sequences of words. And very useful for technical phraseology. In some, most basic level, if you have in a Tibetan text, if you have a, so expression or compound word A, then B, then C, then D, then E, and then yin at the end, it's not going to be always clear where you split things. So looking at how patterned these sequences of words are can help you actually split in a very simple sentence like this, where you just have, basically a subject, a copula, and an attribute or a complement. Then, it is going to give you a sense of like, all right, I'm splitting here, the appositions or the, parent appositions at the right place. So you don't want to just say, okay, that's A is B, C, D, E. Maybe it's A, B, is, C, D, E, or any other possibility, depending on frequent collocations. You can at least have a kind of educated guess when things are not obvious. So there are tools like that. You have as well the possibility to check words in context. You have a central word and you see context before and after. So these are very basic tools. And there are more tools in corpus linguistics, but these ones are very interesting, very powerful in a way. Text mining brought things to the next level. So they use various methods in text mining, so algorithms, to categorize, extract information. So categorize text passages, extract information, and again, from large corpora. So Mipam Sungbum, for example, it's about 20,000 pages. And it's impossible to read anything in one lifetime. So we have to find here other methods. And why it matters is because we want to be, true to the author, like on the side of technical terminology, or as well on the side of discourse, or even sometimes sentiment, things like this about things. So we need to be able to have methods such as these ones that are going to be more than just arguments of authority. They're falsifiable approaches to a text. They can be tested. You can have an apparatus to show, okay, what I'm saying is actually grounded in my text or textual environment. So there are big advantages if you want to, again, preserve, the message of the author or the text of the author, the original thought or discourse or narrative, and then be able to share it with others in a way that is as accurate as possible. So here, benefits, you can quickly group text that are on the same topic, about the same thing, contain the same terminology. You can identify related text as well through topics, for example. I isolated, when I was working on Longchenpa, all text in which Longchenpa frequently talks about Deshenimpo, Buddha nature. And then I want to know, okay, well, what are the topics he's talking about when he's talking about Deshenimpo? So we can use topic modeling tools for that. I will tell you, okay, there are 5 main topics. And for example, Dzogchen, Mahayana, Uttara Tantra, so Gyulama, kind of like conversation, empowerment, things like this. So different like topics. So it gives you a sense, right, of what's going on around technical term. So here we use as techniques classifiers. So we sort basically based on something we know we're looking for, text or passages. We can split text into passages so that we can have finer granularity. We can cluster. So through this topic modeling tool, for example, we'll cluster similar text or passages on the basis of shared vocabulary, common topics. We will not, when we do that, supervise the tool in the sense of telling the tool what it is we're looking for. That we can do with a classifier, with a clustering algorithm. Usually there is an algorithm that will cluster the text based on some kind of similarity. Now we can do information extraction and retrieval. We can perform entity and relationship extraction. That's what I was talking about earlier. We can look at what is called sentiment analysis, but semantic prosody analysis. For example, when the author uses a certain term, is that in a negative way or is that meant in a positive way? Things like this. Of course, we can search and index as well our text in a better way. Now, the third level of all these developments, I think, in my view and in my personal journey, has been, semantic mapping by using word embeddings. So here, essentially, what these methods do is that they map the relationships between words, so based on their context and the relationship to other words. And the idea is that you will discover synonyms or near synonyms and common collocations as well. So terms that are semantically related, even if they do not occur in the same location, essentially. Meaning if an author uses, say, yerme and sungjuk, so being inseparable or being in a state of unity, without ever having them in opposition as synonyms, if the author uses them in exactly the same way in relation to the entire lexis of the corpus, meaning the entire like other words, then the tools will calculate a vector and the values of these vectors in the semantic space will be very similar, which will allow you to say, oh, I have a 99% like semantic similarity between, say, Yerme and Sungju. And so that is very interesting. And that is very interesting for a lot of reasons, because when you have that tool, you can start analyzing how technical terms are used across time, across corpora, or within a corpus too. And it can give you a pretty good idea sometimes of what texts are about. So you can do classification with that, better classification. You can have a better sense as well of lexical values, right? So when the author says this, what is meant by that? And so for their rare technical terms, doctrinal terms, or even colloquial terms, it can give you sometimes a cue or an idea of what the term might be about when things get, we have cases when we work with our translators where some very rare terminology is used. And so that comes up. And or Dzogchen expressions that are not very well known, anything, or maybe in Namtar you have, as well phrases that will show up for which you're like, okay, what is going on here? And so this is a nice tool for that. So the way it's done, vectors are calculated in the semantic space, meaning the relationship between a term and, say, the other terms it's related to are vectorized, and then there's a value you can use for comparison and classification. Words closer in this space have related meanings. You can even map them in a two-dimensional space. So for presentation, see, for example, you can map, which I did I mapped for Deshenimpo at the time in relation to core terminology related to anything describing, tekunani, or like, the ultimate, the true nature of reality, all this across various sungbum by Longchenpa, Mipam, Dolpopa, who else? Jamankense Wangpo, Jadak Limpa, funny enough, because I had the text too at the time. And so it gives you a sense of, when you have this chart, very visually, you can see a map, right? Of, okay, when this author talks about Buddha nature, that's in relation to emptiness always, because they're mapped on the same space and they're very close semantically. For some authors, that's not the case. Then it's going to be close to other technical terms. And the thing is, these tools don't give you an ultimate answer, but they help you to start digging or asking you the right questions and then making better translation choices down the line. So this is really another approach. And then you can, of course, cluster semantically. So you can group related text together, phrases, passages. So for example, I wanted to identify all the texts about Buddha nature by Longchenpa. You can split all the corpus into short, short segment passages, and then start, classifying. You can as well map things. So you have maps. I will show maybe in another session how you can map an entire sungbum and find all the texts that are related to another text you are working on that will appear on the map. And then it's very nice. It's just actually like a, country map. It's just a sungbum map, and of texts that are semantically related. And so it saves a lot of time as opposed to going through the entire sungbum. Again, sometimes 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 pages, and then, figure things out by yourself. So or just by looking for a keyword that may not actually be indicative of what the text is about by itself. So there are a lot of things here. These things are very useful for. Now, AI and LLMs is the latest kind of development. I'm saying this because I want to show the evolution and how, it's not that there was nothing and all of a sudden we have AI and LLMs to look at these texts, to have better translations, or better research about our text. So there's a whole evolution there. And so right now, a lot of us think, okay, we're going to be replaced by machines. We're going to be, possibly, maybe, that's something we can't exclude, of course. But right now, what we can see too is how we are part of something has been developing that's been, brewing for a while. And until now, these tools haven't replaced people as much as we thought they would, including classifiers and all this. They shifted the nature of the work. And I think that's a big key point to keep in mind. We'll see with AI, if we have AGI, this artificial general intelligence that can do everything better than humans, and then maybe at some point there will be a debate too about that. But right now, the tools I'm going to show you, they don't do that. And I want to be clear about that really from now on. So what are we talking about? Artificial intelligence, machines or software that simulate human intelligence processes such as learning, reasoning, and self-correction. So we're talking about some kind of thinking process here in a way when we're talking about AI. Where we'll get there fully is still, I guess, still an open question, although it looks like we're getting there. Now, large language models, LLMs, are subsets of AI focused on understanding and generating human-like text. So LLMs are computer programs that analyze huge amounts of text from our perspective to learn patterns, context, and semantics. And the examples I'm going to be using, so examples of models of LLMs are OpenAI, produced by OpenAI. You've heard of ChatGPT, Claude.ai, Gemini, and DeepSeek as well, a new one. That's quite interesting because it's free model, at least in the browser version. So how do they work? And this is important to understand, I think. And today I'm taking a little bit of time before moving on to the actual tools and case studies, but we need to share some terms there so that we can use the tools. So how do they work? First, we need to train these models, and don't ask me how it works. I think that Kurt Keitzer and Sebastian Nerdish will be able to explain that to you way better than I can. I am just a user, so basically I'm on your site. I'm like, for most of us, we're not AI specialists today on this talk. So, I'm a user and I will not tell you how it works. I understand vaguely the steps, but I think it's a bit of a black box. And still, from my understanding, even for specialists, which triggers maybe a bit of anxiety too, because the radical change here compared to the three first steps of computational methods I shared with you today is that the other steps were very linear. We can figure out what the algorithm is doing. Essentially, it's doing things that are very linear, faster than a human can, like counting terms, essentially things like, But here it's becoming like really a bit of a black box. So first, the model is exposed to massive amounts of data, so billions of words from books, websites, and everything. By doing this, it's learning statistical patterns, essentially, what words and phrases often appear together. Then there's a phase of learning that continues for a while. It can refine its understanding of relationships between words, phrases, and context. And it can also be fine-tuned, which is an important thing for us in the field of Tibetan studies, meaning we can use questions and answers that are, prepared by the person training the model to teach the model how to adapt to specific tasks. So for example, translation. So we'll give a passage, right, on most basic level in Tibetan, and then what is the correct translation. And then the model will learn how to modelize and it's why model is the right term, because just like with a child, first there's learning of language, but then you can, once that's done, you can go to the next step, which is to learn how to perform specific actions. And that requires sometimes extra training. Aligning text, producing critical editions is something that comes to mind, where you can give models of like, okay, this is the data source and this is the task, and then this is the result. And through that, the model will figure out, okay, this is when I'm prompted, when I'm asked. So a prompt is a question, essentially. When I'm asked to do or requested to perform this task, this is what is, expected as an answer in terms of format as well, content and all that. Now, the model predicts the next word or token based on prior input and learned patterns. So I'm saying this because the content that's generated and contextually relevant to answers, as we can see, and this is a big point for us, is definitely dependent too on the training data and the training process, something to always keep in mind. So the training data used to train the model and the input data, and then the whole process of training the model is something that is incredibly important. This is where you have as well a lot of ethical issues, for example, about who gets to decide about that data, what kind of data do we want here, what kind of training do we want here to get answers, some answers, or to not get some answers. How can you reduce the issue of hallucination and all these things? So here I want now maybe very briefly to define key concepts, tokens. What is it? And context window, because we will use these words when we use the browser tools, the LLMs themselves. So a token is a piece of text. It's usually word fragments, could be a bullet point, can be as well a sign. And they're processed when you input your question by the LLM, and then they're sent back to you when the LLM answers, essentially. So you have a flow of tokens, flow of data in the form of like fragments of linguistic symbols, I guess, that are conveying information. For example, this slide has 89 tokens, 357 characters, so letters and, whatnot, and then 56 words. So that's how things work. Usually it's, I think, max 4 or 5 letters is one token. I mean, there are rules depending on the very small size. Now, context window is another very important concept because when you ask questions to the model, you expect answers, but these answers will be dependent on the amount of text the model can remember or the amount of data the model can remember and use at once. Some models, as we will see, have very short context windows, meaning you can't input a lot of data to get answers, which may be a problem. With other models, you can have a huge window. To illustrate this, reasoning models, so models have been trained to think, they usually have a very short context window. You cannot upload 3 books there and ask them really, to process this amount of information. That will not work in most cases, unless maybe you have access to expensive models, but like O3 has just been made available by OpenAI. But otherwise, you have other models where you can dump literally into the model, say 2 or 3 books, and then start, questioning the model on these books. So the context window is important. And what does it mean? It means that if you have a 4,000 token context window, so maybe 4,000 words, less than that, actually, as we can see here, we have less words and tokens usually, slightly less, so it's a bit less than 4,000. You have chunks of words too there. So these 2 terms are very important. Tokens, think of it as bits of data, and then context window would be, how much context, how much data the model can absorb and work on. Now, 2 other things I will talk about a little bit is temperature. So when you use some of these models, they ask you what temperature you want. If you want the model to be extremely creative, so, oh, by the way, I forgot to say that the context window is a rolling window, right? In the conversation you have, in the chat, in most models. Meaning, if you exceed the context window at the beginning of the chat might just like be forgotten, so to speak, not taken into account by the model. But that's another important point, right? So the temperature is how creative or accurate, predictable, focused you want the model to be. The higher the number of temperature, and it's quite important, this factor, when you use the models, the more creative the model will be. But if you want, for example, to count things or to have more, mathematical operations, say, of counting, of having frequencies of a term, you don't need the model to be creative at all for this task. So you would reduce the temperature. And if you want to exclude hallucinations, you would reduce the temperature. Fine tuning is how I was explaining earlier. I'm not going to go there, but too much, but how you can train the model. Essentially, by giving examples of tasks you would like the model to perform and giving quite a number of them so that the model has kind of overview of ways you want to do. Now, practical applications for us. Well, there's content generation, of course. We can summarize text, which is useful if you think you found with other methods, say 20 texts in the corpus you're interested in, be it a canonical corpus or, a summum, say, then you would like maybe to summarize a few texts, have an idea, okay, is it something I want to invest more time into? Is it something that can help my project? So that's one thing. Language translation, all right, we'll talk more, I think, probably next time about translation itself that I was saying. So this is where we have these nice tools again. And yeah, that's something, a big area, and we'll take a little bit of time then later on that. Language support, that is very interesting and very important for the post-editing phase, post-translation phase, when you need to edit, for example, right? So you can assist with grammar, style, consistent term usage. You will see there are discussions, you discuss even of the style of your translation in relation to a text, Tibetan text, and you can enter a kind of dialogue with the LLM saying, well, this text is more poetic than that, so I don't want to use this term. What do you suggest? Or, you can have like a full discussion about a genre, a register of speech. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there, and you can check the rest of the corpus too in relation to these issues to have a better sense of what's going on in your text. Education and research, huge area, I think, because as translators, sometimes or researchers, we have to like shift from one project to the next, meaning, I mean, personally, it's been the the blessing and the curse of my existence having to shift from 7th century Tang dynasty Chinese text to Mipam back to Atiśa in the 11th 12th century early Kadampas, then Longchenpa stuff, and you go from Pramana to Sutra to Dzogchen to things like or to Sadhana and all this. So a lot of us have to do that, and for various reasons. And then meaning you want to enter one of these universes, like as we know, right? That's a whole world every time. And so how do you do that? So how do you make sense that you educate yourself constantly? You keep constantly learning as a translator or researcher about all these time periods, authors, ties, registers, genres. I mean, the whole thing. And it's so vast. So meaning LLMs can really help there. Now you have very advanced tasks you can do. We're talking a bit about that, so I'm not going to spend too much time there. You can do data extraction, which can come handy in some cases, having a better idea about doctrinal terms, figures, again, places. I mean, you can as well ask questions. So if you have the right input data, and I will show you an example about that in the collected works of Kyotön Mönlam Tsultrim that Kama Punso has wonderfully put together in a recent publication. I was looking at the text, found there that is part of a Atiśa's lineage, an early Kalam tradition. So I wanted to know what text there, has the concept of or the phrase Sanche Kolori. And so here you can interrogate the corpus and start having a querying dialogue. And it's in the form of a dialogue as I think you've tried some of these LLMs, some of you, so you know what I'm talking about. Or where does Mipa mention Longchenpa? And for these to answer this question in a way that's meaningful and reliable, we need to have good input data, but that's very much possible. So text analysis. So we're talking right here about patterns, right? Themes, doctrinal connections, overlapping of semantic word senses across technical terminology, for example, making sure we understand that. I will show you an example where we were talking with Kurt Keitzer about, all what is Asrava Dharma Sanskrit or not and all this. I mean, like all sorts of like discussion about Abhidharma, for example, where you want to see whether your translation is correct because you're respecting the truth value of lexical, technical terms in relation to a doctrine, a particular doctrine. So that's very important too as a translator to make sure that you're aware of all the logical and semantic relationships between technical terms. So it's something that can be very useful there. And you can have a whole discussion with some LLMs, the reasoning LLMs about that. You can really say, well, you said this, but in fact, there's that too, and what do you think about it? So we look at a few examples. It's quite fascinating. And again, it's not that the LLMs will, tell you what the truth, what is correct, what is, in these discussions. It's more that it's an exploration process. It's a learning process for the translator or the researcher. It means you're going deeper and you start having a sense of like, I should definitely check this. Things like this. So, it's very valuable. And even if nothing should be taken at face value, it's important. So interactive tools, here very quickly, we can chain LLMs that have been trained on specific tasks, like agents, perform something. And then we can have a whole workflow, something for the future. I won't talk too much about that. So for us, it's a matter of efficiency, streamlining, of course, being consistent with translations, being adaptable, and having deeper insights about the text we work on. Not to mention issues related to the size of the data we're handling. So we have to be humble here. And I think it's really, to me, one of the greatest qualities of translators and researchers in this field want to truly preserve Dharma and share it, or talk about it in a way that is, true to to all these like insights and traditions. It's that we're dealing with massive amount of texts if we're doing the job seriously, as we all know. And so it's how do we do that, right? Can we get some help here, maybe on a very practical level, at the level really where rubber meets the road, right? Can we actually, make sure we covered all the bases to when we assert something, when we say something, when we think this is the way this term should be understood? How deep did we dig, right? So in some cases, it's fine, of course. A lot of work has been done, and we can always rely on good scholarship or good definitions or the author's definitions, but we have to be able to find all this, and then we have to be able to discuss this and make sense of everything that's been said in something in relation to what is said. And that's a lot of work. All right, so I think that's it. And we're going to turn now to two examples, so a few case studies. I'm going to stop here. I don't know, Marcus, I'm sharing my screen, so I don't see the questions, but are there any questions maybe?
All right, so there's only one question popping up so far.
Yeah.
So, hi, Peter. Peter Ellen. Thank you, Gregory. I really appreciate your presentation. You mentioned that among corpus linguistics, text mining, semantic mapping, AI, and LLMs, there's been a kind of evolution. Should that be understood as if the earlier are replaced and subsumed by the latter? If so, does it seem as if AI and LLMs are able to reliably fill the function of the earlier other areas that you mentioned?
So I think there are areas where they are replaced. There are areas where they can't be replaced at this stage because of issues, technical issues such as context windows and some of the queries, without being too technical. For example, yesterday I was trying to align text, and there's a whole methodology I developed to produce critical edition of canonical text that is based on Maurice Bévenot, a philologist from Oxford University, on his work, and that deals with contaminated traditions, And I asked the reasoning model I was working on, O1, ChatGPT O1, and I was asking to align, all the text, which it could do, but using, funny enough, a Python script, right? Colatex. So we'll see that too. So that's what they do sometimes. They just create, to answer your question, they will use a Python script to count things, to, do things that are fairly linear, and then to interpret the results, they will do that. And then I asked to pair all the textual variations for each text unit in the alignment, and to give me pairs for the 30, witnesses I have here in my sample text, and that's a lot of pairs. And O1 didn't answer anything to me, said, no, I can do that. It's like, I said, what do you mean? That would take and the answer was fascinating. That would take hours. I would have to do it manually, it said. And there would be potentially a lot of mistakes. And I was interested. I was really interested. So the process, the LLM understood the process, but it couldn't perform that. Now you see, this is for a lot of operations, you still need the good old linear methods, and the LLM in some cases will use these linear methods to get results. So for example, if you ask for collocations in text and you don't specify how to do this, chances are that the LLM will try by itself to put together some Python script and to run it on the text you gave it, meaning it's actually using a corpus linguistic algorithm method essentially to identify these collocations. So what we're seeing is that, in my view, the LLM and AI is great at looking at data and making sense and having a dialogue about some kind of data, but producing metadata in a way. So data about the data through, corpus linguistic methods, through text mining algorithms, through, of course, semantic mapping or well embeddings will complement the LLM quite well. And it will improve the accuracy of results too, because these results will be grounded in some data that has been pre-processed for the model. And this is a thing we'll see that's super important. And I'm very grateful for the question. Thank you for asking this, because we'll see that chaining operations, chunking operations is something very important when you work with these models. And you can't just dump on the model your whole query and push on a button and it will come perfect. Very often, and we'll see that maybe next time, I will talk about how you prompt and what's the logic, the basic logic of prompting. And chunking is very important, like having a step process. So my view is that the old method is still going to be there. They do very well what they're doing. They're cheap as well in computational terms. They're not very expensive. So the thing is that you're in full control. And then you can use these results with the LLM and have another view. Instead of you, painstakingly going through the results, you can have an evaluation of the results from the model, and then you can further check things. For us, in the field we're in, doing what we're doing, which is working with these texts. And when I'm talking about LM and AI, I'm not talking in general here. I'm talking really about my small area, right, of focus, which is how I do text analysis, for lack of better words, with these tools as a translator and researcher of Tibetan Buddhism. That's like really, say, the angle. So to answer these questions, I guess some tasks may be replaced, but by and large, I do believe that there's still space for these older methods.
Yeah, maybe we could just actually jump in and do some of these
There we
before,
go.
because we're already getting to an hour.
Yeah, here we are.
Take a look,
First
and then
model.
we can look back at some of the questions.
Yeah. Can you guys show my screen? I see my screen, sorry?
Yeah.
Is that okay? All right. So that's the first model we're going to see. So we're going to see how we can identify text and look at text to get a sense of what they're about. So I'm going to show you, this is the interface. So I don't know if you can see, this is AI Studio Google.com. This is a free tool that's online. So if you see inputs into your own browser, if you Google, just Google AI Studio, it's confusing, but say if you search on Google for the phrase Google AI Studio, you will land to something like that after signing up. And it's a free tool. You don't have to pay for this. It can do pretty amazing things. So that's the first one I wanted to show you guys for the specific task of exploring texts you have in mind because you already know them or you want to So that's the interface. And I think I've been asked to explain a bit about the tools, not just the process and everything, but how the tools work. Because for some of us, it's a new way of working, and people may not be familiar with the different interfaces and all that. So here you have the libraries, all the chats you've had. They're just there. If you click on that, you'll have all the conversations you previously had. You can create a prompt. That means you would go on a new page and start something new. What we're going to look at are a few things that you will see across models. So first, system instructions. System instructions are going to be instructions that will not be just valid for, say, one query, but that are going to remain the background of the model as something the model has to take into account. It can be about the tone and style, academic or colloquial, informal, or but it can be as well instructions contextualizing the role of the model for the entire conversation. So here, originally, it's gone. I had something like uh, you are an academic expert in Tibetan Buddhist studies and a Dharma translator of Tibetan Buddhist texts. So you contextualize what the conversation is going to be, about and what's the role of the model that you expect throughout the conversation. Whatever is in the system instructions is going to be accounted for by the model, in that conversation, the entire conversation. So that's important to know. And here you can specify various, say, factors that the model will have to take into account throughout the conversation. So it can be the role of the model, it can be the tone of the conversation and the answers, the style. It can be about any context, large context from the big picture kind of perspective about what this conversation we're going to have is about. So this is where it goes. So every time you see system instructions or chat instructions, you know that this is what it is about. So we can't put anything too specific here because you won't get any answer. There's no answer. It's just instructions, right? Now, here is where you're going to query the model. Here, sometimes you can add files, meaning data, project data for the conversation, or dump even the data. Sometimes you just put it from Finder or Explorer, right? And just dump it there. And so that's really the basic thing. So once you upload your data, you have something like this. So I uploaded here the text file, and it's a very large file. It's probably, I think it's 1 or 2 volumes, so it's huge. We're talking about, hundreds of pages. And this, I'm showing you this small because it's very interesting for to explore large text, which other models won't let you do. This one can take here token count up to 2 million tokens. And here you will choose the model. So here on Gemini 1.5 Pro, I think that's what I used at the time. But there are new models, and you may want to experiment, for example, with Gemini 2.0 Flash Experimental. These two here are good. This one is a reasoning, model. And if you go on a reasoning model, look at what happened. That token I have here, I have almost 1 million tokens, exceed the window, the context window. So remember what we're talking about. Usually with thinking or reasoning models, the context window will be much shorter, and this is happening here. So Gemini 1.5 takes 2 million, and it will be good for a lot of exploration tasks. So something we shouldn't worry about. I mean, right now, I think it's good to take that. So it's half the quantity. You can take Gemini 2.0, it's quite good, but it's only 1 million. So depending on what it is you want, at the level of what we're doing to explore text, Gemini 1.5 is already good. Pro, I mean, is already good, very good. And there's a whole thing about this one too these days, Gemini experimental, 1206. So there's like a lot of like stuff about that one too. I mean, like people are saying it's actually getting really good. You can use it too. You have to use different models. And here, that's something you will see with all the interfaces, all the environments we'll be using. You have a choice of models, and they do different things. They sometimes are faster, sometimes they're cheaper if you want to use them, with a plan, or if you want to use them with an API. So if you want to use them from, say, a Python script, and then you get charged by, whatever you're asking from the model, then you have to find the model usually that will fit your needs because it will be cheaper. But for us here, we're just going to use free stuff. So we're going to go with like this one. And the temperature here is for what we do. We go with a low temperature most of the time when we go for exploration, because we want to know, we don't want the model to invent things too much, and we can reduce it further, But the idea is I don't want my model here to be creative. I don't want to hallucinate things. I don't want to be poetic. I don't want to be, what I want is to get answers. So that's, I think, at this stage, what most of us should know to start using the model. You see, it's very simple. It's very easy. You input data, you select a few parameters in the model, and you're in flow. You give maybe a few instructions to contextualize what it is you're trying to do, and what is the field, the area, the task about, and what the model, in which function the model should act. And maybe sometimes what your purpose is too. And I will tell you in the next session how you prompt these things in a way that's structured. But that's how we start this. So any question maybe at this stage, guys? Because that's kind of like important, I think. It's the basic for those of us who've never used these things, don't know anything about that. We want you on board. So, let me know if there is anything else that you want me maybe to, you know.
I don't
Is
see
that
anything
okay?
popping up right now, but I think if you keep
Yeah,
going ahead here to show us
sounds
one
good.
full example, then we could
So here
understand what's going
I
on.
type in this, and it's taking a little bit of time. So the only drawback with AI, Google AI Studio is that the models are free, but what they call the latency, meaning the response time, can be high. So I just prepared a little chat here. So that's my text file, in Unicode, Tibetan Unicode. And then I want to know what the text is about. So I say I know nothing about it. So when you start working with this, my advice, and we're already talking, you know, in the most practical level, start with things you know. Start with things you know. If you're about to start using these tools and you haven't yet, to understand what these tools can do and cannot do, and where you can benefit from them, start with a text you really know well, to get a sense of where the model, comes short, or to have a sense of how the models interact with the user, right? So it's always good to start with something you know a little bit about, to see if the model is hallucinating or not. For example, if this is a model you want to work with, there are a lot of models, as you will see, and some of them are good at some things, others are not. And that we have to be really upfront about that. It's not like every model is just as good. And that's why we show you. See here do you see my toolbar here? We have my tabs. So I'm going to show you things like with AI Studio. Cloud is good for our purpose very often. I will show you Perplexity. I will show you Notebook LM. I will show you what else? DeepSeek, I think, as well somewhere. So there are, things that models can do better than others, all right? And so experiment when you start. If you haven't, I mean, if you know all this already, you don't need this kind of piece of advice, right? But for those of us who are at the very beginning of this LLM journey, it's good to start with things you know well, to experiment and to find the tools you want to work with. So here, give a detailed outline of the uploaded text. And you'll see that very often my syntax or the format of my text is sloppy. I go fast and sometimes forget there's no punctuation. Sometimes there are cap like letter where they shouldn't be and stuff like that, or even like misspellings. It's interesting because the model doesn't care too much about that. So you can really use it. You don't have to be 100% accurate and freak out about whatever. But as we will see, the structuring of the instructions, particularly when you chain them and they become more complex, is interesting and important, really. So here, the text you've uploaded, titled text appears to be a commentary on the Dzogchen teaching within the Longchenpa tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, and so on and so forth. And then I have a whole outline that's given here, about the content. So the chapters, the content of, what is in the text. We're talking about a very large text, and there are misspellings on the side of you see, I mean, things that are, English phonicization that the model hasn't been trained to do necessarily in a correct way. You can ask for Wiley, you will have it. But what I mean is, or Tibetan Unicode, but when it starts like phoneticizing, in Tibetan terms into English, sometimes you have weird stuff. So that's, I think, so it gives you a kind of like overview. Now I go with something a little bit more complex. And we will see next session how you write these prompts and how you start structuring what it is you want the model to do. So here I ask as a first step to read the entire upload file. Step 2, produce a detailed 3,000-word outline of this work, at least the sections, chapters, and enumeration, structuring the text. Step 3, if you hit your token limit, use several messages. And this is important because of the context window. The model has a context window, how much data it can give you back. So that's something as well you have to know there. It's how much data the model can send back to you, and sometimes they're limited. So there are tricks to make sure that you will have a more complete answer by saying, okay, well, then use several messages if you limit it in terms of your context window or in terms of your token limit per answer. So here it will break down the whole thing, goes more into detail. And yeah, that's a kind of like really useful thing if you're looking for a special so it goes, you see, with the AntConc. So each like section of the text, it's more structured and more detailed in the previous answer, and it will like give you main points, and you can expand. And so the dialogue and the chunking with models, this approach we have is that say, I'm interested in this. Now we have to ask for the model to expand that section. And that's something we have to get used to when we use these models, is the way they work. They work very much as giving you a first outline when you ask for summarization or outlining. They will give you, a skeleton, a kind of like an outline, and it's down to you if you want to take a deeper dive to have a more specific prompt about a section you're interested in or another issue. So you see, I'm trying to now, through more complex like prompting, to get a more detailed answer. I want more detailed answer than that. And sometimes it's not easy because of data limitation. So data in this world is expensive in a way, and that's the reason why, I mean, we all heard that the AI um, tycoons want to build nuclear plants now to produce their own electricity and all that. So what I mean is that computational exploration comes at a cost. So you have to pull their teeth sometimes. You know what I'm saying? You have to find a way to extract the amount of data you want. One way to do it here would be to say, okay, just take the first section and give me a 3,000 word summary or 500 word summary. I will do that. And then you go to the next one and so on and so forth. For humans, you would just say, okay, give me 3,000 words, 5,000 words, and you would expect everything to be balanced and everything. But in this world, chunking goes a long way. And so having a first like outline and then taking a deeper dive section by section will give you an extremely detailed summary at the end of the day. But you have different prompts to do that. And this is now we're really going into the world of how, I was about to say how they think. That's more how they function, right? And how they've been designed to function and about their limitations too. So here you see, it's way more. It's already, the prompt has worked because it's way more detailed. So for each like, say, section of the text, you'll have like, a more detailed account. And we are reaching, you see, the end of what the model can afford to do in one answer. So we go with like, continue, all right, continue from previous response. And so that's something you will see a lot. When you start working with these tools, the chunking nature of the work is so like apparent. And so you have just to like, but look at that. I mean, we're getting a very detailed idea of the text. And so part two, second half of the text. So with several thousand words we're getting from this tool that are maybe not going to be, and here again, that are not going to be necessarily 100% accurate. They're not necessarily going to be, perfect in a way. That's maybe not as good as what a human may have done. But look at the time. To produce this without paying anything, right? So having a very cheap like access to that. Every answer here, maybe 1 minute, say, which is very long. We'll see with Claude it's faster. This model is long, but you have 2 million or 1 million context windows of tokens. So huge amount of data. And so, you know, maybe in 5 minutes, say, you have an idea of a 1 or 2 volume, like text you're working on the fly. And then it's of course down to the translator researcher to further, refine this process by asking more questions. So look at that, it's still doing it. It's still continuing, going through the whole thing. So, it gives you what the section is going to be about and what you expect to find there. You can ask then another tool to verify and check this, for example, too, if you have time, right? So, but here I just wanted to show you guys how you can explore literature. So, okay, let's go. I'm going back to another prompt, and you see I want to review things here to make sure. So now I'm giving to the model another role. We'll see that next time when we, have a little presentation on prompting. I give specific instructions that are chained and that are so step by step and that are as accurate as possible for each step. And we'll see that, I'm worried here about hallucinations. Like what is an hallucination? Models sometimes will take some information from the training data, or we'll literally hallucinate information and feed it back to you as an answer. And so there are ways to try to minimize this problem, but this is an actual problem, and this is why there are a lot of operations, particularly in our field, for which we can't be replaced at this stage as humans. Maybe as well raising like computational cost, to be fair. Like it would be extremely expensive, maybe. Maybe it would be feasible at some point, but extremely expensive. So what I'm saying is check results, and then you can even, take the results, copy and paste everything. For example, in that case, go into another conversation or another model and ask to check. If this is something very important, you want to do that. If you're exploring, it's less of an issue, right? So now we're exploring, say, one more than 1,400 page like text. So we don't have time to read. So we go there. So the model is saying, okay, having reviewed the detailed outline provided in the previous responses, I offer a following academic review. And now it's like literally reviewing the work it has previously done. So it's giving, some feedback about this issue, for example. However, there are some instances where the outline deviates from the text or introduces information not explicitly found in the uploaded document. And see here, I'm choosing this example to show that we have to remain critical. It's a wonderful exploration tool, right? But you can't copy and paste the information expecting it's going to be 100% correct. And in some cases, it will be critical. In some cases, it'll be okay. I want another view. I don't want to I'm not going to publish this. I'm not, what I'm saying? And you want to know, okay, by and large here, what this text is about. That's fine if there is maybe a few, but if you want to publish this as it is, it's, it's problematic, really, right? So again, there are tricks, there are ways we'll see that, how to prompt to minimize this risk. But look, it's really going about like specific tantra titles. While the text mentions the broader categories of Samde, Longde, and Menagde, and alludes to specific tantras within Longchenpa, the outline names tantras like Kondro Nintigs and so it's telling you some things are not really accurate, some minor inaccuracy. So it's giving you some feedback here. Omissions. So it's interesting too. It's giving you, okay, there are other points that could have been expanded upon. So it's not really a mistake here. It's more like, overall feedback. The detailed outline provides a solid foundation for understanding the structure and content of text. So, okay, so you get here a sense, right? And it could be any type of literature. Gemini 1.5 and 2.0 are, funny enough, quite good with Tibetan. And I think that at this stage, Claude.ai, we will see, is probably the best model for a lot of operations we're doing. And then Gemini can be extremely useful for summarization because it's cheap too. Claude.ai, as we'll see, you have to have a subscription, and it's quite an expensive model to use as opposed to that one. So this one I wanted to show you, and that's something maybe until next session you can experiment if you're interested with your own text. And if you have questions, please, send us an email. I will have time to look at it. We can talk about it more next time. So quickly, here we're fitting the model. So again, we select the model, we give instructions. They're gone now because I did that a while ago. So apparently, funny enough, my instructions are gone, but I put some instructions there. I always use the system instructions with Google AI Studio. I think it does make a difference to contextualize, what it is you're trying to do in terms of role and task. So, and context about the task sometimes. Here I uploaded two texts we're working on. Very interesting. It's the Bodhicaryāvatāra Bhashya by Atiśa, found only in the Natong Tenjo we found for the project we're working on, which is a bodhicitta slash Bodhicaryāvatāra website we've been working on for a while that we will share, in a few months, hopefully, shameless plug. And and so we've been working on that. And here I uploaded two texts, a commentary actually that comes in two sections by Atiśa, and that is kind of a bit, has not been researched and not really been looked at by anyone too much. There's a Japanese scholar who wrote a paper in German about it, but he didn't like translate the whole thing, didn't look too deeply at the text. So, all right, we are going to ask them all what the thing is about. So that's the Chunche text I was talking about, this like a scythe chariot, like with blades, like cutting everything on its path. That's the name of the text. And it's coming from a kind of like Lojong tradition, probably originating from Dharmamitra, one of Atiśa's teachers. So here I'm like, okay, what is the text? The outline is being like, and in the meantime, we translated this text and worked on it with Kenpo Tampel Konchok, who's, working with us, etc. So we've been looking at that. And here we get a kind of like first overview that's not too bad, that is telling us what the text is about. So, it's essentially a text that uses the Bodhicaryāvatāra to integrate all Mahayana traditions into one way to practice. It's practice oriented in a way, in the sense that it's doctrinally linking all Mahayana concepts and like gradual practitioners, the Gotra, all sorts of notions like the Bhumis and all this in relation to the Bodhicaryāvatāra. So very interesting and cryptic text. So it gives us something about the colophon. This is correct. And actually, it's a very important text. The text uses Selimpa, so Dhammakirti's, right, from Sumatra. Suvarna Dvipa, Dharmakirti. So this text on these two anthologies and the Bodhicaryāvatāras that everyone was wondering about, like, why do we have two short versions, short anthologies of the Bodhicaryāvatāra? And so here the text is explaining how to use this when you take the Bodhicaryāvatāra as your core practice on the Mahayana path. So then give me a detailed outline of the second section, the second text. And here, okay, so the second PDF you provided, 2-point Atiśa PDF, contains Tibetan text title. And that's correct. So that's correct information. Everything here is correct. And one thing is a little bit hallucinated, and I will show you ways. So here we go with the breakdown of the content. That's correct. The whole thing, is giving you an overview of the path, and you have a 19-fold cycle that is basically including all the worldly paths, the transcendent path, and then the two kayas. And so that's 19, and the model gets that right. So I will fast forward a bit. So here we have verses at some point that are, quoting the text. I'm asking if it's a quote from the BCA. You are absolutely correct to question the attribution of that, because I'm not sure about this. And actually, I know it's not there. And now the model is saying it's not there. So you see, that's a case of hallucination. And you see, I'm saying I cannot find any mention of this text in the BCA. So you see, I want to show with these examples how useful they are and what the limitations are. And then we can discuss about, is AI really useful or not? Are LLMs something we should be using? What are the ethical issues? But it will be informed and grounded in a better understanding of how these things work. What is it can do? What is it cannot do? When for us, how can we benefit from them or not? So anyways, you're right. The verse you cited appears in the two commentaries in the BCA you shared, and blah, blah, but not in the BCA itself. So you see, Gemini here was caught like red-handed, right? Hallucination. So in a way, yeah. And then there's an explanation. And that's what is very interesting with the LLMs is when you put them on the right track, the next thing they will do is rationalize why actually you're so right. So they will like explain to you, oh yes, you're so right, it's actually about that. Oh, I'm so sorry, or I apologize, because they've been programmed to react in that way and not say you're mean, you're so mean, yes, I was wrong. But so in a way, there is this kind of like thing, and then it will go on and pick up on your comment or correction, and then do a whole post rationalization. And that really shows the limit too, of the tool. Now you have that a lot less with thinking and reasoning models because they are trained to have several steps to check on their own findings, to take that from a different angle, to verify the sources, you see. So if you go with O1, for example, or if you go with this model, probably here, I haven't tested it too much, but this is a thinking experimental model. Then these models, you see the context window is very short, but they kind of think better. So anyways, I'm asking a technical question and here about what are the donjuji, the 10, well, 11, possibly even 10 actually, because of the number of chapters of the BCA. And so you see I'm using BCA now. And I just like, so that's very interesting too, is that the models will make sense. So I use Bodhicaryāvatāra, Chunjuk, or, Chunjuk or BCA. And if I go with BCA, the model usually gets it. So you see, it's like, and that's very funny because I didn't do that. I never specified this. So I'm saying this because it has an impact too, right? The way we formulate our questions, like how accurate do we have to be? How much can we assume a model knows about something is a big question. In some prompts, that's an issue because the model doesn't get. But most of the time, and that's quite astonishing, it will actually find a solution here. So anyways, we have a whole conversation there. And I am having a whole exploration, and I fixed this problem only recently. I want to say that that's been a big problem for everyone, Aimer, Saito, who worked on that tradition, to figure out what are these 11 points. And here, it's not correct. The answer is not correct. But that was great to have this conversation because, that's the thing, you see, that's the thing where it's like having someone who maybe is not going to be 100% correct all the time, but raising like issues that I need to think about. And maybe I didn't even think about that. So what is possible to create, you see, list of 11 items from the BCA, they will likely be less effective in capturing blah, blah, blah. So I have a whole so and then it's telling me if you encounter a different, just let me know. And I'm like, dude, I'm asking you, So the question is like, you're going into, and then I'm trying to find another way. I want to know, okay, maybe if he gives me a kind of Tibetan sabji or something, it'd be clearer. It's a different strategy. I'm trying to so, and you see it goes with the Tibetan and everything. When I'm like very lazy here, I'm just, typing it like that. So it goes with like, sure thing and blah, blah, blah. And so look, so it's spinning out now in the way of a Tibetan sabji, really, the whole like thing. So I'm thinking maybe through that, I will find my 11 points that Aimer and Saito have been like trying to identify too. This will not work, but that was great because it's like it's it's interesting. So now there is a puzzle here too, another puzzle, which is it's the two texts are found in Atiśa Bodhicaryāvatāra Bhashya. And so the thing is, there are two sections, different colophons and stuff. So it's kind of a little bit. And if you look at the RKTS, one of these texts has actually the RKTS number 0, T0, which is not usual. And so indicates like kind of problematic to attribution or something. And so I'm asking for how are these texts actually connected? And there's a whole as well conversation there. And all these things, the way I'm working with this personally, I'm not taking any of this as an answer. I'm taking this as a starting point for my own work, for my own reflection, for knowing, okay, these are the points I have to validate. These are definitely questions I have to answer. These are really amazing pointers, but I have to cover my bases. If I want to come up with something, and so did I think about that? Did I think about this? And I wanted to show you this and start with these two examples with, you know, um, with this data exploration, text exploration, when you're starting on a new project and you have no context maybe, or you don't know what the text is about, or if there are other texts that could be interesting. But yeah, I call it exploration. It's text exploration for real, right? So you see, I'm looking at, okay, they're both using the wheel color as a metaphor there. Do they intersect in that or not? Like, is there any kind of anyways, so you see all sorts of questions you may want to have before you actually translate the text. The text hasn't been translated yet at this stage. So when I ask all these questions, I'm like literally, trying to find areas of further research or critical points or key issues I have to keep in mind as a translator and researcher to, make sense. So anyways, a lot of things there. We look at the Sanskrit, the Tibetan, different translations. And I'm asking again, and so that's what LLM can do at the level of exploration. They give you access to, what some texts are about, whether you want to include them in your, project documentation, so to speak, project knowledge base or not, and what kind of points are important. So I don't know how much more time do we have, Marcus? Do I have time to for one more or?
Yeah, do you want to take a question or do you want
Sure.
to go on to the next
Yeah,
thing?
we can do a question.
So there's two questions here that might be relevant. So one was asking about how would we provide some corpus or example text for Google AI to use when translating, like a RAG-like feature. Is that possible?
Yeah,
The other is how would you compare two outlines, like two texts, like upload two files and then compare? So that's kind of two different things, but I don't know if you
right.
want to answer one of them or maybe
Yeah.
one treating
What I
the
can say is the RAG is basically you have your documentation, you upload it, and you start questioning. So that's kind of, what we have here. Some models, they don't have that. Like the thinking models usually don't let you upload any extra PDF or text file or anything. You can
Mm-hmm.
copy and paste, but it has to be short and to the point, right? So you have to really have tricks. We can talk about that. You have a RAG as well. If you use a model, a bit more like, but that's locally a local model. So you have some models you can use on your own computer that are not connected to the internet, connected to your data sets, for example, and you can, integrate search results, so interesting documents. I will show you how to do this without having to code too much. So, but here, when you have 2 million tokens, it's a kind of RAG thing where you can upload 30 documents here, depending on the length.
Mm-hmm.
And so just like tap into that extra layer of external data that is, say, chat specific, right? Conversation specific or project, as we will see with Claude. You have projects and you can have a knowledge there, so PDFs, and you can have them different chats that will tap into the same project. You have different like ways to do that. Here, you just dump it. You just dump the data in your thing. So that's one thing. For text alignment, I have a whole case study about that. And I think today, unfortunately, we won't be able to do that. But for text alignment, including editing text, I think maybe next time, if we want to have another session, if there's an interest, we can look at that. So I think it's somewhere here. One of these tabs is about an alignment. So we can look at that and a complex as well, critical edition with 30 witnesses and discussion about stemma for those of us who want to do critical editions or look at at analyzing results of critical editions. It can be interesting in case of contamination between various transmissional lines. So anyways, maybe next time, if that's okay with you guys, I would like maybe before, if we have a little bit of time on the same topic to show one more thing. And that's going to be the first time we're going to be looking at cloud. That is like a very interesting model for us working in this field. That's as a lot of us know already, because I'm sure a lot of you guys have been using it. And so I won't spend too much time about the interface and everything. But essentially, you can have projects. That's a project. There's a project page there if you go there where you can literally upload data. And these data will be used in every single chat. So Claude is there are chat control stuff as well. I'm not using it too much, but here you see that's the file that I've been adding in the project base. And I want to show these because here that's another project. So I'm working on the same tradition as the Atiśa tradition, say I'm looking at this this Kadampa master from Nartong, and I'm using the wonderful work that Kama Punso has been doing. So I'm using in a corpus linguistic tool called AntConc. It's free, a really amazing tool. I'm using this tool, and that's going to answer the other question about, the interaction between, say, older computational methods and LLMs. And I think it's quite fascinating. So here it's a quick table. So word keywords in context. My keyword is Bodhicaryāvatāra. I want to know in all the, collected text of Kyotön, everything there is to know about his relationship to the Bodhicaryāvatāra, and if he has written anything on it, if how many times he received the teaching. So there is a Sanyik, for example, there is a Namtar, there's one commentary and all that, but I don't know that. At this stage, all I know is that I take all the text, I use a corpus linguistic tool, extract, every passage. So 500 words before, 500 words after my keyword, which is jojuk, or, yeah, any other equivalent, like going with really, yeah, anything that can give me some information. And that is not LLM. So meaning whatever I have there is extremely reliable because it's very linear. The process, it's identified, right? There is a script that will go through all the text files and find all the occurrences of this term and then give me back all context before and after, 500 words. So nice passage, really. I forgot how many lines I had there because it comes in the shape of a table, but I had like I think about probably 40 rows or something. And so that would be time consuming to read everything, but I still want to have an idea about that. So I know the occurrences in the entire collected works. I know what comes after and before. I know in which text these occurrences, are found. And so now what I want to do is to process this information to be sure that I'm going to look at everything Kyotön did in relation to the Bodhicaryāvatāra, the Chenruk, right? So now, okay. So I have a project, I have a script, a little instruction here, like earlier in the knowledge base. On this page, you're able to input general instructions that will be used basically across all the chats, all right? Together with the data you uploaded there. So why is this the prompt? The prompt is a bit complex, but still, I think, manageable, although very imperfect, as we shall see. I am looking at what the Kadam figure Kyotön Mönlam wrote about the Chenruk or Bodhicaryāvatāra BCA. So I'm trying to help, I want to disambiguate as much as possible. Read the file and count results. So that's my keywords in context around the term Chenruk. And that's the file I showed you. Make a list of all text in which, see, missing thing, it mentions this word. For each text, give a detailed overview. I write about, I'm going really fast. So I write in terms of doctrine, practice, anecdotes, or any other topic connected to Shantideva's work. Here, spelling is like, it's fast. If he mentions anything about Shantideva, sum up the content. If you hit your talking limit, use several answers. And I'm getting this. And Claude is really good at both background knowledge about Tibetan Buddhism and Buddhism in general, and very good with language. All right, so I have analyzed what Kyotön Mönlam writes about the Bodhicaryāvatāra. Let me break this down systematically. So he's saying text mentioning the BCA is Sanyik, okay? A text about Shantideva. So that's quite interesting. He's finding a few texts there, right? Doctrinal content is going like this. So in the Sanyik, you're not going to have like a lot of stuff. So it's just like, you receive from various masters the transmission or the teaching. But that's very interesting. I have like some key figures there. In notes, receiving various BCA related teachings, including all these things. Very cool. That's nice. But yeah, that's good. But when I got there, so you see it's going, and honestly, it's quite nice, right? It's giving me, so that's text that I'm interested in, which is the Tsenche Koro, text. Very interesting. It's there. It's even giving me the full title Tsenche Shinte Koro. So I have everything here. And then what we're left with is this kind of list. So I'm like, okay, that's good. It's giving me context, but I want more than that. And here I have a complex prompt, a bit more like, what I want, you know, Claude to do is to look at all the passages where they're found in, you know, in which text in the corpus. And then I want him or her or their or it to give me, it's funny how like things like, yeah. I will have this problem several times. I'm sorry, guys. It's just, but yeah, I won't because with code it becomes like an actual conversation more than with say, Gemini, and that's a funny feeling. It's a weird feeling, but so extremely weird. But what we have here is an actual conversation. I'm saying, okay, look, it's good, but I want something else. So, in descending order of BCA relevance, so to speak, give me the text. And here I have the text number, which I know what the text is. But look, it's becoming kind of really good now. So here, I have a text that is completely on the BCA and the BCA practice. So you use the BCA on the path. And I know for sure that this tradition is exactly that because of the Atiśa, ancestor text related to that particular lineage. So I know, yeah, that's good. That's very good. Then this text is giving me extensive doctrinal discussion of BCA and blah, blah. Here I have a text that's going to be a ritual to generate bodhicitta actually, but look, it's going to get better. So these teachings received, including BCA. So now we're really, I know what the texts are more or less about. I can have a sense. Here we have Senyik, Namtars, possibly things like that. So I have teachings and transmissions, lineages. And now I want text by text to have an actual summary, right? In the instruction, that's why I asked. So it's going about and that's a blind test. There's no title. What we have to keep in mind is that the results from the corpus linguistic tool give me a text code. It doesn't give me, and I wanted to have a blind test there. It doesn't tell the LLM what the text is. So the LLM doesn't know by the title of the text what the content may be. It can't infer content through the title. Like I don't have a Shipa or I don't have saying, oh yeah, it's gonna be a commentary or Drelpa or something. The model doesn't know the title is Senyik or something or Namtar. So it's very interesting for the purpose of testing, Claude on these kind of operations and tasks. So most detailed discussion of BCA practice system, you bet the text is entirely about the BCA and how to use it. Outlines 3 levels of practice, that's correct. Uses the wheel metaphor, which is the lineage and the text I'm interested in. Then this one, cites, it will go through the whole thing. And this one, I can expect more philosophical doctrinal discussions. This one is another text that's being translated by Kamapun. So very nice short instructions in which you find that's very related to, the Bodhicaryāvatāra, and it's giving you an idea about some kind of narrative. Okay. And don't forget, at this stage, Claude is not looking at the full text. And the reason why it's because the context window is too short. So I had to use corpus linguistic tools and select key passages at this stage. And that's a very important point. At this stage, we don't have a context window with Claude, unfortunately, that's large enough that could just put all the text files of the entire text and proceed to queries like that. I had to find a kind of way around that. What is amazing, it still gives me very valuable information. I have a list of key text. Then I can upload one by one or, as much as I can, the text in the project knowledge base, and then interrogate Claude about individual text, which I will do. But now I'm starting, see what I'm saying? I'm starting tightening a bit the noose around, the corpus, the entire corpus to identify key text for the purpose of documenting Kyotön's relationship with the BCA and everything that's related to that. Now I know there's no hallucination there for a reason too, is that the data that has been processed is corpus linguistic based. So it's very extremely reliable, right? So anyways, I have a whole bunch of text. And then I ask as well to identify lineages from the text. Is there anything about the lineage? So it's telling me, okay, text 022, gives the most complete lineage line. Very interesting. There's another lineage here in 024. All this is correct. I checked it like manually, so to speak. So I want to have specific practice instructions. Where can I find them? Well, 024, which is this Tsamcha Shinte Kolo, Tsunche Kolo, text. So correct. Here as well, it's actually, I think, a scenic, this one, but it's like giving ideas as well of how the text was used in Natong. So that's a last little thing I wanted to show maybe. I don't know if it's too much, but we're in the section still at the very beginning of our journey. I'm sorry if I was too long. There's a lot to show. There's a lot of like operations that these tools can perform. And we're still at the phase of the project documentation, which is literally the very beginning of this like workflow in the translation process, where we're looking into, okay, what are the texts I'm interested in? What text should I look into? How can I identify multiple texts? I mean, what is interesting across multiple texts? Or how can I explore a single text that I know is interesting? So now, for example, how you chain things is important. Using this, that maybe you want to look at a text 24 and 20. You bring them into, what we've seen, Google AI Studio, and ask for a summary if the texts are very long. And that's the way you start your say as well. Really having this chain operations, this workflow that is, um, making things really interesting because the effects are compounded, right? You first look at the right text, then you go into, an exploration, kind of like tool that lets you explore them in detail. So that's maybe, I don't know what we can start for this session today. If there is an interest, you see we're here, and all these things here are practical case studies. So I probably have 15 covering all bases. I had to take a little bit of time today, and I'm sorry about that to define terms and to explain a little bit what these things about. Some of us are at the very beginning of their AI/LLM journey when it comes to translating Buddhist texts, so just thought it'd be a good thing. I'm sorry and apologize for everyone who knows inside out all these things and probably better than I do. So, but yeah, contextualization is important. When you use these tools, and maybe I got too much like a LLMide or something.
It's good, good, good. Yeah, there's some questions already coming in about how we can continue discussing these things in the future, maybe creating a forum or on Slack maybe or something else. So yeah, let's look into that. So maybe, do you want to share, maybe we could follow up with everybody that attended in some way. We could send out an email. Maybe you want to share those slides, and then we can make a plan for another meeting or creating some kind of mailing list or a place where we can keep talking about these things.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff. So totally. I mean, I'd be happy to keep the ball rolling and see how we can continue. I'm sure. I mean, it'd be beneficial for us too on our side because it'd be great to have feedback, to have ideas, or one thing that's really important is when we go to this one, when we go to these operations. So what I showed you is ideas I had on how to use these tools, but other people may think of other possibilities, and so that's like where it's great to have a community maybe of people who are interested because it's all about being creative in a way, I think, to some degree about, okay, these tools are not perfect and everything. And next time I will talk more about limitations. I stopped because I thought it was too long about the whole presentation, right? And you guys wanted to look at case studies. But I think it would be good from time to time to have this in mind too, these little theoretical things, and then turn to the case studies and go back to. But yeah, as a community, there are probably a lot more ideas too we can have together. And so, like the next thing is like how you explore a catalog. Are you in a catalog ask the LLM, find for me, all the commentaries on this, all the things like, or, I found two texts in a Tanger. they recently with Marcus and Alex yesterday were looking at the Bodhicitta Vivarana, you know, and all these two actual versions of the text in, you know, so okay, well, what I did, you know, to get the sense is I upload the text and I can show you, I mean, that's a little case study, just upload the text files and discuss about, you know, the colophon, the incipit, the whole like content, entities, start getting a sense. Are we talking about the same thing or are we talking about two different, completely different things? You know, of course you can do that too with, say, a pure aligner that will align things. And there was a question about that. So there are tools that let you align text and see additions, omissions, transpositions. But with the LLM, you just upload the text files and you can have a conversation beyond that about, are they talking about the same people? For example, you know, is the text located in the same place? I mean, different things. So anyways, there's a lot of like, I'm just giving this as an example because we will all think about usage, you know, different like ways to use these tools, and keeping the community together of people who are interested in this could be wonderful and really help everyone, you know, benefit from these tools and be aware, remain aware of their limitations too. So I'm totally open for, you know, for this. And
Great.
if there is interest, let's do it.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thanks everybody. So we'll reach out with an email to all of you that attended today and follow up, and we can plan another workshop. All right. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.